the muscle that you've warmed up is 2 to 6 times less likely to be injured. But yeah, mostly like our human body is super well designed to move. It's not well designed to be still. And it works brilliantly. But now and again, the screws get a little loose and you need to fix something up.
You're listening to the Elevate Podcast, and I'm your host, Robert Glazer. Join me as I talk to world-class performers about how they build their capacity and reach greater heights in leadership, business, and life, and how you can do the same. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. Our quote for today is from Joseph Pilates. Physical fitness is the first requisite of happiness. Our guest today, Henry Abbott, is a pioneer of sports media. Henry's an award-winning journalist and founder of TrueHoop, where he and his team cover basketball with depth and curiosity. Henry previously led ESPN's 60-person NBA digital and print team, which he published several groundbreaking articles and won a national magazine award. He's the author of a new book, Ballistic, The New Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance, available wherever books are sold. Henry, welcome. Excited to have you join the Elevate Podcast.
Thank you, Robert. Good to be here.
So I always find it helpful to start with the early years. Can you talk about your relationship to sports and maybe kind of sports media growing up?
Yeah, I was a kid who loved athletics so much that I would dribble on the gravel alone, like shooting in the driveway at my dad's house in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't like that little fine gravel. It was like the big bumpy gravel where the dribble would go like crazy directions. But
and if you were 6'7", this might have ended differently. But
it would have been amazing. Yeah. I did 3 sports in high school. I just love moving. It wasn't natural to me to just keep moving. And then I never thought. I studied journalism at NYU, and there were some kids there who were like, yeah, I'm going to do sports journalism. And I don't know why I had this feeling. I was like, that's not a real job. Like, that's too fun. You can't do that.
Yeah. And
so I studied like journalism. And I worked at CBS News. And I did like serious things. And then I had an opportunity to write for a basketball magazine. It was literally like a favor for a friend. She was like, we need a freelancer to do this one story. We're going to ask the Nets power forward a few questions. We'll write for you and we'll give you $100. Will you do that? And
you're like, you're going to pay me for this?
Yeah. I was like, I don't need the $100, And he was an amazing interview. Like, it was so long ago that one of the questions was, do you use email?
Yeah.
And this guy's like, Jason Williams was a wonderful character. And he's like, oh, hell yeah. Every time I get in the hot tub, I have my staff print them all out and bring them to me. Like, I don't even think that was true. I think he was just saying that to be provocative, but I was hooked. I thought sports journalism was pretty fun. And I've been basically covering the NBA ever since that day.
So your big break in basketball media came with TrueHoop, which was ahead of the curve as I think a purely digital blogging oriented platform. What did you see in basketball media at the time that made you say, I've got to build something different here?
Great question. Christmas 2004, this British friend of mine at a Christmas party in Brooklyn, made me start a blog. He literally logged into Blogger and started it for me. And I started just screwing around on Blogger and quickly found that when I wrote basketball stuff there, this is like no marketing, no nothing. It got more meaningful response from the NBA, from front offices and stuff, than the stuff I was writing in magazines.
Yeah.
And I think in the whole time I wrote for magazines, which was years, hundreds of articles, I got one letter in response from a retired player who was pissed off. But I was writing about I don't know what the Pacers are doing or on this dumb blogger. And it was immediately became a conversation, a lively back and forth. And I was like, well, this is just a better medium. So then I started going to geek dinners. Does you know anything about this? Does this ring any bells? Okay, so
I've been to dinner with geeks, but I don't know if that's the same thing. Yeah.
So at the time, blogging was emerging. There was this little cohort of thought leaders. Robert Scoble, who went to Microsoft, was one of them. There are various others, and they had these big dinners where they would just talk about the future of media and technology. And so I went to one and I started reading all these books like the Clue Train Manifesto. And I just kind of gave myself, Rebecca Blood had the 7 rules of blogging. I just kind of read all about how this thing works. And then a little crazy, but I convinced my friend to invest and my wife that this was a good plan, even though we had one baby and another one on the way. And I was like, let's go all in on blogging. And
I'm a blogger. Yeah.
I think it was the 12th basketball blog in the world.
Wow.
And then weird stuff, honestly, started once it became TrueHoop and I hired someone to make the design nice. I was literally just a few weeks old and some guy called and said, And you just won a Forbes Best of the Web award. And I was like, dude, we've had like 14 posts or something. Like, what are you judging this on? And then Google called. Literally, the phone caller just said Google. And
I didn't know Google called. That's interesting. Yeah.
They literally called.
What did they say?
From sales, they're like, TrueHoop had moved into the top 100,000 websites in like record time. And they wanted to understand my approach so they could like, because usually it would be like a team of people doing that. And so I just wanted to have lunch in their Google cafeteria was my goal of that meeting. I failed. But all these weird things. Yeah, just then eventually ESPN called, literally it's an ESPN on the thing. And then they acquired TrueHoop. So like, yeah, a bunch of weird stuff happened with that blog.
So you went from the kind of independent blogger to leading a 60-person digital team at ESPN. I got to assume you have some leadership lessons that you learned from that experience and in trying to scale.
Oh, we don't have time. Yeah. But yes.
Give me a highlight and a low light.
Yeah. I think I got to drive like a Formula One car, right? By the end, we had it dialed in pretty good. And we were shattering all these traffic records. And like as a manager, I got to manage people who like my biggest managerial point. I mean, I had to lean on people mostly to work less. They were so driven, these people. By the time you get to ESPN in this sports media business, like you have ascended the mountain.
Yeah.
And so I was managing, like Jackie McMullen and Baxter Holmes and Pablo Torre, and those dudes are all workaholics.
Jackie's, she's Boston, right?
Yeah. She's Boston through and through.
Die hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's always on the news here.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, I love, like, what a treat, right? This is the way you talk about Formula One, right? You can do no better than like have meaningful conversations with Jackie McMullen about what's the most interesting thing we know in sports today. Like, let's write about that. I guess the low light was there's such profound sort of tired groupthink that is in the way of innovation in every industry, but media maybe more than most because people have made so much money doing things the old way.
This is why in your case, and I was at a AI kind of seminar yesterday, and I was like, look, like the person who's going to disrupt you needs to come from outside your organization, right? That's why but it's very hard for the people that created the current system to break it. Almost impossible.
Yeah. I was hired to make change I was promoted to make change. And when I got the job, I was negotiating the terms of the deal, and a really, really smart like Silicon Valley buddy of mine was like, this is a big organization that's saying they want change. Yeah. He's like, you want to set up like a recurring meeting with the tip top people just to make sure they still want that change. Because like they didn't in the end really want that change.
Everyone loves progress, but no one loves change. I like that quote. That happens a lot. So one of the things that you did was you helped break a lot of major stories that the NBA teams wanted to keep hidden. I'm curious, what was one of the stories that you fought to tell, but that felt a little bit risky at the time? Oh,
so many. I mean, they're still mad at me about, I did a story about like the World Anti-Doping Authority declared that the NBA has like their testing is a joke. And there's a bunch of, like, one of the little throwaway lines in that story is that when the NBA first was called in to testify before Congress about their testing program, the medical director told Congress that of the first 26 failed tests they had in the NBA, he used his discretion to wipe aside 23. Nothing to see, like.
It's funny because there hasn't really been a lot of NBA scandal around this stuff, but it doesn't sound like it's not because it's not happening, right?
I mean, David Stern told Congress that it wouldn't help in basketball in 2005. Like, wrong. Yeah, the mechanism for it not to happen.
People are like, it doesn't make you hit the baseball better eye, bat contact. Like, yeah, but when you make contact, certainly goes further. Look, someone pointed out a stat yesterday. The Red Sox are causation and correlation. The Red Sox are mired in mediocrity for the last 4 or 5 years. And on the radio station, they were reading off Alexis Cora's record on teams where he wasn't stealing signs. And it's pretty bad. Like, so like, it's hard to kind of ignore facts like that like, if you take out the years where the teams were stealing the other team's signs, like he's got a pretty losing record at this point.
I'm not some like Puritan namby-pamby, like, it's unfair. But I am like, sports is ultimately nothing but a set of rules.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't have to be exactly lit out, but everyone should know at the start line what the rules are.
Yeah.
Right. And we should agree on that. If you're busted, you're busted. Right. Sorry, you cheated. Right. And I'm a runner, and like, I'm aware that if I run my local 5K, probably someone is taking testosterone, and I'm going to do a little worse than that person. Like, I don't lose any sleep over that. But if I did for my career, like, to me, the big red flag in basketball is nobody brags about being clean. Do you know how strange that is? Like, in track, they do, because they've been through their crap, right?
Cycling, they don't, because it's like endemic in cycling. Yeah.
But they do. The EF education first is like bragging about being a clean team. That's the formative part of the team. In basketball, you can't find a single athlete because they're scared. They're scared of the regime that would be mad at them. Like what the that's a bad sign.
That's interesting.
It's
not a point of differentiation. I get it.
Yeah.
So you've come a little bit full circle. Substack marks your return to independent roots. Totally different media climate today, though. So I'm curious. So how have you adjusted to the change, and what's similar and what's different from the blogging days?
I mean, what's similar is just the freedom and a lot of the lessons of blogging apply. Like for instance, I don't think you should publish because it's Tuesday at 11. I think you should publish when you have something magnificent to say. Right? That was true on a blog. That was true in Substack. The difference is discovery. I mean, Google just drove people to a good blog post. And other bloggers had the habit of inbound linking, which signaled to Google this is a special thing.
It was all search. It was all search driven.
I mean, it was heavily, it really made a big difference. And there was just kind of a collegiality. Like, we loved each other, all of us basketball bloggers. We met up in person. We drank. We did stuff. We played basketball. That's all over now, right? For me anyway, I just don't feel that that's happening. Substack has a giant crisis of discoverability, right? It might be that, someone writes the greatest thing of all time. A very small percentage of it gets updraft, right? The app is starting to drive some traffic, which is great, but we don't have this method of driving people to the good content. And I don't know if we ever will. It's a little worrisome about we're all a little siloed in our habits, and, I subscribe to these 12 and I read these 12 and I don't ever read the 13th. Right. And
what is interesting, though, is that it's given people that the writer is more important than the paper. Right. That's the huge structural change, is that it's like removing your columnist from the paper that you didn't need to buy, and you can just buy the columnist that you like, and then eventually they'll need to bundle it or package it. But it's an interesting change.
Yeah, the bundle's coming, and then we're back. Then where are we? It's a little bit like
it's like cabling. Everyone's bundling.
Yeah, exactly.
The Boston sports guys were on the radio complaining about this the other day, being like, "I need 5 subscription packages in there to watch the Red Sox game, so I'm going to undo it." They're like, I cut cable, but now I think it's cheaper with cable. It's like it's just maddening, like trying to keep up with it.
They're using machine learning to gamify our wallets, right? To get the most out of us for this content, right? So it's like, we're probably not going to beat them with just like, let me just log into Comcast to see if I can figure it out. It's like, no, you're not. They're going to win. Like, they're pretty good at this.
So let's dive into your new book, Ballistic: The Science of Injury-Free Athletic Performance, and a little bit of life performance, I think, too. Look, it opens with a bold idea that everything we think about injury prevention is wrong. I'm curious, what led you to challenge the traditional training orthodoxy, and what is that training orthodoxy?
So it's not been studied. There aren't really, even at P3, the place the book is about, they don't really have evidence on the training effects.
Yeah.
So every time someone says, there's like this guy, knees over toes guy, right? He's is big on the internet. He had really bad knees. I'm blanking on his actual name, but everyone knows him as knees over toes guy. He trains a bunch of NBA players, and every time you go to the gym, every trainer is going to tell you not to lunge with your knee going past your knees going forward. That's just a thing everybody says. There's no evidence. There's literally no evidence that this is where the line is, right? And then he trained differently and had great results. That is not to say this is some miracle cure everyone should follow. It's much more complicated than that. But like, that's one. There's 100 more. And training is basically impossible to study, because anyone you assign this homework to, they're also moving all day, doing all the other things they're doing. And it's very hard to isolate the cause and effect. So, we just have this kind of tired, there's like this one of the ones is
stretching has gone. I remember you always, it was like stretch cold before soccer warm up and then it seemed like after 20 years of doing that, everyone was like, that doesn't work at all. Yeah.
Now it's all, I did actually, so there's a whole chapter in the book about like the P3 warm up and how to warm up, and all this science of hips and ankles and rotation and all this stuff. And late in it, I just had to ask Marcus, the founder, I'm like, why do we warm up again? Like, is that a real thing? Is there research for this? And it's actually, he's like, look, there is research that you're
dynamic warm up though, not
dynamic warm up.
Right. I mean, I remember soccer practice. The first thing you do is you sat on the field, you stretched out Cole. I think now that is, probably after you had your 2 boxes of Snackwells. Most of the stuff in the 90s was horrible, advice.
Yeah, for sure. But you're like, the muscle that you've warmed up is 2 to 6 times less likely to be injured right then. Like, so I'm like, oh, that's real. That sounds good. Let's do that. But yeah, mostly like our human body is super well designed to move. It's not well designed to be still. And it works brilliantly. But now and again, the screws get a little loose and you need to fix something up. And I think I was raised like my gym teachers were the most simple thinkers in the building. And like we had this idea that like, it should be, that's your knee. For knees, you got to do ice and Advil or whatever. And like the answer is not simple. Like this is it's 600 muscles moving symphonically, and it takes a very special brain to assess like where the little tweak is. And the tweaks that they're finding in this giant evidence-based approach is like all pretty different than what everybody was saying before.
Yeah, look, we don't have a lot of probably elite athletes maybe listening to this podcast, but we probably have a lot of 40-year-olds. And I know as I get into my late 40s, I have noticed, as late as you can get, I have noticed just constant injury. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I think you notice is, from your overall performance, when that one thing is bothering you, it's kind of the only thing you can think of. Like, I never thought of my elbow until I had like horrible tennis elbow. And then I know, like I can't lift up the bag, or I can't do this, or I can't ride the butt. Like you just never notice it, when it's working. So, I'm excited to dig into some of this because I think a lot of people are. I was joking with my kids. I sent them they're all teenagers, and that someone had shared with me. It was called it said Only Dads, a channel you subscribe to watch my injury of the week and learn about my injury of the week. So I know there's a lot of people listening who don't want to be hurt and they want to continue to sort of work out and perform a high level. I know you talked about that elite athletes are kind of injured all the time. Like that I get. I mean, they're doing a lot more aggressive stuff, but what's the root cause, and what did you what are some of the key things you learned about like reducing the kind of injury cycle in your research? So
this guy, Marcus Elliott, tore his ACL in high school and then went to Harvard Medical School and worked for the Patriots and the Mariners and all these places. And he he's 40 years into trying to figure out like what is upstream from an injury. Just like we treat heart attacks 10 years before you get the heart attack now, right? Because we know what the echocardiogram says.
Tom Brady figured this all out, no?
With the infrared pajamas, yeah.
Or the pliability or all that stuff, yeah.
And so they have this massive data set of basically, when an NBA player tears their ACL, go back and look over the years before their assessments, like what are the trends of how they move. They have more than 1,000. They have thousands of elite athletes on their servers. They have 1,000 NBA players. So they can really start to make data.
And they go look at the upstream data, basically. Yeah.
And so basically we're learning this is the first time we've really learned like,
what are the data points there? Like how, did you where are they getting the data from?
So the assessment, I've been through it myself. It takes about an hour. They put 22 reflective points all over your body and you jump around, step up a box and jump as explosively as you can. You do like a one-off skater where you move sideways. It's an hour of this. Also, they just will put you on the physical therapy table and measure like, how far you can move your knee to the outside and inside and how far you can rotate.
But this is before you get hurt or after you get hurt?
Well, whenever you're in there, right. They'll assess you.
But if I blow up my ACL, how do I go get the upstream data?
You got to finish your PT first and then they're going to go.
Okay, that's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. But mostly they want to see the baseline of just you healthy because the goal of the training is to get you back to how you move. Not like the right way to move, but how you move. And so they have as you're jumping around with all these points, there's 1 million data points from your hour of moving around. And they get to be agnostic about what matters, right? They get to just say, like Q angles, valgus collapse, this is your knees diving into each other, has been like the most studied thing in biomechanics for 50 years. Turns out it's just not a big deal. Like it just doesn't predict much. It's like it was just the one that we could see with our naked eye. Once you have all of these angles, I think with the 22 points, every second you're moving, there's something like 280 angles. Like they all matter. And this Q angle one is not especially important in injury prediction. But if you land on the outside of your foot and have your weight roll to the inside, that's something that 100% of NBA players who tore their ACLs do. Like that one matters. It didn't even have a name. No one studied it. The second most important one is as you're landing, some people have their femur. So as you go into a squat, some people femurs, I'm holding my hand up here, rolls to the inside. Your femur rotates. You can barely see it with the naked eye, but the computer can see it really well. Like it twists your ACL like you're taking the drumstick off the turkey, right?
Yeah.
Major injury red flag. A huge percentage of NBA ACL tears have this. No one's even looking for it. Your doctor doesn't know about it. Like your trainer doesn't know about it.
Find it.
Yeah.
And then how do you fix it before the ACL tear, right?
So there's the femur is the longest bone in the body and it has trochanters on it. These are little notches to hold it in place.
Yeah.
And there are muscles that are attached to those trochanters that just aren't strong enough to hold it in place. So you strengthen them, right? They'll figure out exactly what's going on with you in particular. And then you're going to step a yard over there and start your workouts and you're going to train it so it doesn't do that. They've done it 1,000 times. Or with the lower leg one, same deal. There's muscles of the lower leg that will keep your foot from doing this kind of sloppy movement as you land. They're going to teach you to land in a different way. And there's great research, even separate from P3. There's decades of studies that if you teach female soccer players how to land, they reduce ACL in ACL tears like 68, 70%. Same principle, right? They're just going to not have this. They didn't know the cause, but now we do. It was this, they would land in this kind of sloppy way. You can train that.
Well, there was some interesting, in the story you share some basketball players who dramatically reduced injuries with simple shifts, barefoot training, different warm-ups, sleep tracking. Which one of these things felt most surprising to you at first? And what made you kind of a believer in this?
So back when I was an editor, publicatory with the story about Steph Curry's ankles, Steph Curry was he later confessed, was privately very concerned that his career was going to be over 3 or 4 years into his career because he just could not get healthy. His ankles were sprained all the time. And then the Warriors hired this new trainer from the Timberwolves named KK Lyles. And KK had hip problems of his own that ended his own basketball career. So he was kind of tuned into hips. And he thought that maybe you could solve Steph's ankle problems by strengthening his hips. And he put Steph through this program where he became strong, I think actually second strongest on the team in just all of these hip measures. I forget the measure, but I think he could deadlift 400 pounds or something. He got his hips crazy strong and he stopped spraining his ankle because, it makes sense if you think about it. This is the song,
the knee bones connect, everything's, I actually had a similar thing. I had this terrible nerve pain behind my left shoulder years ago. And I went to the specialist guy and he had me working on my right leg and hip because everything gets out of balance. And I'm doing all these stretches. And then finally my left shoulder pain goes away. All this stuff is interconnected, right?
It really is. And the primary in P3's data, the primary cause of non-contact injury, and it's not even close, is landing. Right. Yeah. These are the forces are ridiculous. They measured an NBA player landing with 11,000 newtons of force. That's triple the force required to fully sever a human spine. Right. So we're completely counting on our landing gear functioning. And it's that.
And the plane comes in sideways sometimes too. So.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think of the egg drop thing in high school physics class. The egg will break. The egg's going to hit the ground. It's going to break you unless you have a good contraption. Our contraption is these 3 stack joints, right? Ankles, knees, and hips. And it's a really good contraption if they all bend, track in a pretty good line, and bend at the same time. But a third of us don't bend our hips at that time, and so it just puts insane force in your lower back.
So where did sleep tracking come into, and how did that improve injury reduction?
I don't know. P3 does not sleep track. It's not a factor. They kind of poo-poo what they call inertial sensors, watches and stuff. They're like what are you going to know from that? There is a ton of research I know about from outside of this book project where NBA players in particular are wrecked with fatigue. We had this woman from Stanford, Sherry Ma, would just track. She looked at the whole NBA schedule when the schedule came out, and she would predict teams that would lose games, completely agnostic from which team it was or who the opponent was.
Travel schedule,
just in the travel schedule, and she would be Vegas handily every year. She was just
that's super interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting for an executive to think about, in terms of looking at a travel schedule and you have a couple big pitches or big keynotes and you're likely to not do as well on those, right? Yeah.
It's like, I think the data on just driving a car is like worse than being drunk.
Because the data they have, all the people that are against daylight savings, is when that daylight savings shift, car accidents go up dramatically the first week just because people lose that 1 hour of sleep, which is interesting.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Everyone agrees. This is typical of our politicians today. Everyone agrees we should eliminate daylight savings pattern, but no one can agree on which one we should go to. So we haven't changed it. They all agree.
What's the big argument, though? I don't like who's like vehemently on one side. I don't really get it.
Well, here's if I explain it to you, I might get this. If I explain it to you, you might understand it. So the biologists are on the it actually like goes better with your circadian rhythm and a lot of these problems if you stay on standard time, where you wake up in the morning and you get sunlight a little earlier, and you'll fall asleep better if it's sunlight is on the other side. But the people who like the longer days or the day or those benefit from that, they're strongly on we should stay on daylight savings time, not standard time. They want the sort of extended sunlight at the end of the day, which has some pragmatic things for being outside or rec leagues or work or physical work, or you can imagine painters and plumber, people who work outside, right? But it's not as aligned with our circadian rhythms. So I think those are the two camps on that. But shockingly, they both agree that if we just fixed it, we'd be better off, but they can't agree on how we should fix it, which is perfectly a perfect example of our politics today.
I do think like a measure of leadership that is too, like, I've never heard anybody else really bring this up, but I'm like, when it's evident what's going to happen next, like a measure of your leadership is how quickly do you get there?
Right.
Like just how
in
quickly
this
can
case,
you pivot?
either solution is probably better than the change, right? So it's kind of a weird, sad thing. It's complicated. There's a cost to it. There's confusion. People miss their flights that week. Like, it's just kind of funny.
But these are all these like 2 weeks later, we're over it, whatever it is, right?
You're
it's
over
just
it.
fine.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
fine.
There's an initial adjustment, which you can actually put a number on that has a couple $1 billion cost. But so they're like, why are we doing this twice a year and paying attention to it? So, interesting. So one of the other things that you talk about is that explosiveness, or I guess you call it what true ballistic movement is actually, when you train correctly, that's what protects the body. I think it's the opposite of what a lot of coaches preach, right? Which is like kind of go more careful than fast. So how is this different than conventional wisdom, and how do you kind of explain that to skeptics?
So the way that we move in our neurological process is very deeply intertwined with how we use language. Only it's way more complicated, right? There's this Oliver Sacks quote that like language is this little tiny raft sitting on top of like this ocean of movement components of our brain, right? It's 600 muscles moving in synchronous ways. So you want to train that, right? The process of landing safely, which is the key injury risk moment, is something you want to be prepared for, because you're going to have to chase your dog when it gets out, or you're going to have to walk down the stairs, or you're going to have these moments of impact, and you want to be sophisticated and trained in how you put your foot out so that you do it in a way that won't, tear your ACL or script your hip or lower back or whatever. So the training is extremely careful. It starts with a dowel or you can use a broom handle, and you just jump back and forth on 2 feet over that. And they're watching at P3, like how you do that. And if you have your toes a little bit up and you're on the balls of your feet and your lower leg muscles are activated, then you can progress to bigger movements. And eventually you get to like what they call line jumps, where there are several large plyometric boxes in a row, and these incredible athletes just fly completely over them, like bounding along. It's kind of breathtaking, but you only get to progress to that if you earn your way up with good form.
Yeah.
So I think the big idea right now, like at my gym, I love my gym, but they want you to only step down off the box, not jump down off the box.
Yeah.
Because they can't guarantee that we're all going to do it safely. Right. But I think that the idea is you kind of want to have a plyometric part of your routine where you do train and rehearse in these things that are shown to be like profoundly preventative of.
So flexibility sounds like it's a big part of this, right?
Yeah. They have assessed however many thousands sets of hips at P3, and every single pair of hips comes away with a recommendation. And it's either for more mobility, as you say, or it's for more stability. Women tend to need more stability. Men tend to need more mobility, but it's not a perfect line. And the joke is everyone who does yoga should lift weights, and everyone who lifts weights should do yoga.
Right.
Because you can't have good hips without both of those things, but people work on the one they're good at, right?
Well, I find a lot of people, it's interesting, particularly as they kind of enter their 40s, they're either big on the cardio or they're big on the weightlifting. And it's a similar thing. If you read all the experts, it's like, you probably need to do more of the one you're like. I was one who for the last 5 years was doing almost 90% cardio, and I've shifted to more strength training. I think there's other people. I have a relative who declares he's going to be a very, very good looking corpse who does all strength training and no cardio. But you need both of these things. I think that's interesting. Whatever you're doing too much of, you need the opposite, right?
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't agree that those are the two things, right? Like you're missing yoga, right? Like you need real, like your range of motion is measurable in all of your joints, and it's declining every year. You're not making sure it doesn't, right? Like you're not. It's hard to get it back, right? So
strength, cardio, yoga. For something around flexibility.
If you went to P3 every year and got assessed like an NBA player, they're looking at when you land, like how much range of motion do you have in all of those joints? And as it declines in, say, your hips would be a common one, you're putting all the landing force in your ankles and knees. And then it's going to decline in your ankles, and now you're going to blow out your knee, right? Like you need those three joints to accordion as you land when you're running, when you're jogging, whatever. And it just goes away with age unless you fight for it.
Well, have you seen, I don't know I think we have early data, but not real data. And this for a lot of parents with their kids in all these club sports, 7 days a week. I mean, you're starting to see injuries in 20-year-olds, repetitive stress injuries that you just used to see in people that were 50. This seems like it's going to become an epidemic from all these kind of club sports.
Yeah, this is a big topic. There's a great Baxter Holmes ESPN story that involves Marcus Shelley. The book is about just like 16-year-olds getting surgeries that
Tommy John
this kind of stuff. I'm actually writing an article about this right now for a major national publication. But yeah, it's about movement vocabulary is the theory, right? So just like I said, language is like movement in your brain. Like I think we're raising kids who have been kept so safe that they don't have a good movement vocabulary. They don't know how to put their foot down when they're landing. They don't know how to climb a tree, swim in a brook or whatever, right? Kids who grew up with much more varied and frankly dangerous movement patterns have developed more of a way to cope with all the different challenges of being physical.
Sounds like they know how to fall, literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah. I mean, most common, the biggest problem really is just knowing how to land, right? Like we just haven't done it enough. We spent too much time in the car, on the couch, just not being sophisticated about how to land. It's
kind of interesting that I know you are making the physical argument, but someone could make the equivalent. I think I know this is not your area, but like emotional argument. Like I think we have stunted people from being able to land on their own. It sounds like physically and also mentally and emotionally, and they're the same problems. They're not physical, but you got to learn and stick. You got to land at some point on your own.
I totally agree. Yeah. So it's about robustness, right? And they are deeply intertwined, right? The physical and so they had this giant machine learning project where they went through all of the NBA data that they have on their servers at P3, and they let the machine learning kind of group the findings into whatever it would find. And there's 7 types of NBA player, right? Like there's specimens are the big like Zion Williamson, super forceful. There's hyper athletic guards, but there's this group called kinematic movers. And those are the ones who are just neurologically efficient at moving forces through their body. They aren't the best at just, jumping super high or running super fast, but they do very well in the NBA and they don't get injured. And the characteristic is that they're just very sophisticated and they can land on either foot. They can explode in any direction. They're neurologically sophisticated movers. And basically P3's training has just become to train everyone to get into that category, including us, right? They're just like get more neurologically sophisticated.
But as you say this, I think about it, like when I see these kids downhill biking with no helmet or parkour, jump, like the kids doing super dangerous stuff, they have learned how to land. Like that is when you think about it, like that is, they know how to land safely, and probably because they played around with it and took some risks like early on. it really, like, you downhill biking, the people that don't wear the helmets are the ones who are literally going to die if they fall. Like when you see some of the stuff that they're doing, but it's pretty crazy. But they land so naturally. And
the longboarders, I feel like we've made this extremely safe, like walled garden of like approved movement. And so now the people who are outside that are like outside the bounds of society entirely.
It's
right?
Still good to wear the helmet. Like,
if their parents were like, hey, I think it's cool you do this and we're going to come watch you, like they would probably wear a helmet, right? But instead it's like, no, you're just lawless. Like you're just a renegade out there. So but at the same time, like I think we're going to have to, I was thinking about this, like climbing trees. Like, do kids who climb trees have better health outcomes in life? They're never going to study that because it's so beyond the bounds. Like
the answer is yes, though.
Lauren, we research like psilocybin and cocaine or whatever, but we're never going to research kids climbing trees because it's like mind-blowing, even though everybody did it, right? I'm like, why are we living in a world where this is like?
Are they better risk takers? Are they better? Yeah, it's interesting.
But the thing I like about it is like, actually, there's a little quote in the book. So Marcus grew up in this wild and free thing where he would like jump out of a tree into this little makeshift swimming pool from like ever higher heights every year. And he's like, it was a tiny target. He's like, and if you missed, the quote is, shit was going to get broken.
Yeah.
And so the point is like, your senses get unbelievably sharp right then. And you really learn exactly how to jump because you really feel the risk. And if you land in a trampoline park, like you don't have to get your senses that sharp. Yeah. You're never that, it's never that important. But I'm watching wild animals and like they all have like these death-defying play moments in their youth. They all do. And they're like the best movers on the planet.
Maybe this can be your follow-up book, Stick the Landing, and it can cover it holistically, both physically and mentally.
Yeah. Well, we got you. Don't worry.
There's a section in the book about play. I think not just drills, but creative movement. So now for high performers or people who work out hard or athlete, whatever your thing is you do, like, and like to optimize, like this might be a weird adjustment. What is the case for play and how it can unlock better results?
Well, I think first of all, like working out isn't fun enough for most people.
Yeah.
It's just not. I mean, just like, do you have an ultra marathoner friend? Like, are you like super jealous of all the time they spend like ultra marathoning? Like,
but they are like weirdly like it. I mean, a lot of those people are swapping one addiction for the other, sort of in my experience.
So we've made sports something for those weirdos. Like that's a big L. Like it should be like, hey, you want to come? Like I'm not a frisbee golfer, but those people are having fun. You know what I mean? Like,
is pickleball fun? Does that count as fun?
Yeah, I think pickleball is actually the perfect example of something that has taken people who didn't want to exercise and made them think, give it a shot. Pretty fun. Like,
it's a lot of, I would say, like pickleball and tennis, like it's hand-eye, it's front, back, left, right. Like you're getting a lot of different movements, right? It's not really a repetitive. I mean, your wrist is, but your legs are going in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah, you're moving in all three planes. Like, you're maybe jumping a little. Like this is a big win. There's a fair amount of pickleball in the book for this reason. Yeah, I think, this is the part of play is, I spend a lot of time with Alex Ash, who runs their sister business, which is kind of like P3 for you and me. And he's a martial artist and a wizard of movement. And his whole thing is like, people just need to play way, way more. Like your teenage kids want to wrestle with you. Like, do it.
My teenage boys wrestle plenty for me all over the house. So,
my son just like shoves. He's just like, I could be sitting here right now. I mean, he's in college right now, but like he would just come and just start shoving on me, and I'm like, "Are we like dueling now? Like, what are we doing?" But yeah, I think that these prescribed movements at the gym are not nearly enough to get your hips to move in interesting and cool ways, and your lower legs. And there's this research that like if you just have like there's some hip muscles like the psoas. If you measure nothing but the volume of your psoas, which is something that you can achieve with some pretty weird and obscure wrestling type movements, it predicts your mortality. It predicts how long it takes you to recover from cancer. It predicts like all these crazy health things. And I think it's just a marker for, do you move in varied and interesting ways, right? What
are some other good play things for people who are listening?
I mean, I'm a little bit reluctant to like prescribe anything. I just think it's like everybody knows what's just outside their comfort zone. It's like the next thing they want to try.
But I'm sure some people are like, I don't even know like what counts as playing. Like not what are just some other examples? I guess that would be helpful.
I mean, sitting is not good play.
Yeah,
right. Everything where you're moving your body, like let's go, let's do more. And I think you probably have. I mean, I go.
Chasing your kids around the house.
Chasing your kids around the house. One of the greatest things in my life these days is I have a text group of a ragtag bunch of misfits, and we routinely meet and walk 20 minutes into the woods and jump off this waterfall into the icy cold water. And on the walk in, everybody has a little anxious energy.
Yeah, so
and
it's mental and physical. Yeah.
And then when you're walking back, everybody's high as a kite. You're just like, there's no problems in life. You're so excited about everything. Like,
interesting.
Things are available everywhere on planet Earth. There's someone on a rope swing somewhere near you right now. Like, don't never go there. Like go do some fun stuff. And it might be a little outside. It might be you're not supposed to park there when you go. Like, I just feel like I'm on
a little adventure.
Yeah. If you ever wanted to ride a skateboard, like figure it out. like maybe there's a guy in my town who rolls around. I love this. I live in this little town, New Jersey. This man's been doing this for 20, 30 years. After work every day, he puts on rollerblades. He has long flowing hair, and he rides right down the middle of the street at like car speed, just like whoa, just like tears around the town. I'm like, yeah. Everyone thinks he's a weirdo, but he's got something going for him, All
right, Henry. Last question for you. This can be multivariant, singular, repeated, personal, or professional. But what's a mistake that you've made that you've learned the most from? And it could be a training mistake too.
Yeah. Well. I have pretty profound back issues that I now know the cause of, which is I spent my whole life not bending my hips until in the middle of writing the book, I got assessed and I was like, I bent my hips a little bit, but like I had a signature P3 problem, which they call being a blender, where as my ankles bend and my knees bend, my hips wouldn't bend very much. And people who do that are 300% more likely to have profound lower back pain because the force of landing that's supposed to go into your glutes as they stretch down don't go into your glutes. Instead, it just goes up the chain, and you can see on the MRI how it's just like damages my lower back. And I'm like, so now I know how to do it right. But like I'm 50. I got to cope with all the disc damage I've done, and so bummer. Like I wish I would have done every step of all those marathons with a little more hip flexion.
Never too late though to get started. So where can people find your Substack, learn about you? Where can they get the book?
So all the basketball stuff is at TrueHoop, TrueHoop. I started henryabbott.com as like my author website. And then I did start a free Substack just about the book topics, which you can get to from henryabbott.com as well. And the book is everywhere. I kind of a fan of getting it from your local bookshop, and they might, if they don't have it, make them special order it, and then I'll start carrying it. That'd be great for me.
Awesome. All right. Well, Henry, thanks for joining us, and hopefully helping some of the listeners here avoid further injury and improve their training and performance.
No, super. Thanks for having me, Robert. Really fun.
All right. To our listeners, thanks for tuning into the Elevate podcast today. We'll include links to Henry's work and Ballistic on the detailed episode page at robertglazer.com. If you enjoyed this episode or the Elevate podcast in general, I definitely encourage you to sign up for Friday Forward. It's my weekly newsletter with over 100,000 subscribers on Substack and shares a pretty quick message every Friday morning, I should say. It's also free. Join today at robertglazer.com. Hit the Friday Forward tab, or you can just go to Substack and look for Friday Forward. Thanks again for your support. Until next time, keep elevating.